Welcome back, Tentacle Nation. You're about to hear two unfiltered interviews from the men connected to the Bryon Macron case, a case that left more questions than answers and a trail of missed opportunities only a blind man could ignore. Spoiler, they did. First up is the interview with David Centner, former captain at the Medina County Sheriff's Office, the guy who was in charge of the operations when Bryon Macron vanished and later turned up stabbed, floating in Chippewa Lake. Centner's going to tell you in his best don't blame me voice that nothing was overlooked, that everything was handled just fine. This, of course, ignores two tiny problems. One, the media roasted the handling of the case. Centner actually brings it up in the interview. He's upset about it. And number two, BCI, that's the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Not that they did any great job on this case either, but they officially found that Medina County Sheriff's Department botched the entire thing. But sure, tell us again how you would change nothing, Chief. Then we have David Swinehart, Chief Ranger of the Medina County Park District. Swinehart's account sounds more reasonable, but even he falls into the trap of assumptions. Frozen lakes, washed-in bodies, and theories that don't exactly hold up once you dig into the real data. So, again, I'm going to go into the minutia, play the entire interviews, and so this is what, again, I'm not trying to control the narrative, but this is what I would be listening for. With Centner, he claims nothing was missed except the township hall wasn't secured. The crime scene wasn't protected, and forensic evidence evaporated faster than a politician's promise. And dismisses foul play, even though Bryon Macron had 6 stab wounds. And he offers no acknowledgement, even later on, even current today, as far as I know, that BCI found his investigation failed at the most critical points. So, also listen for the sound of someone rewriting history, badly. So, let's talk about Swinehart. Describes the lake as frozen over, but weather records tell a different story. And he notices the forward driver's seat and blood on the steering wheel, but no urgency to treat Macron's vehicle as a crime scene. He suggests Macron's body was washed into the lake, a theory BCI did not support. And listen for a well-intentioned account, but one that quietly glosses over inconvenient details. Before we roll into the interviews, let's level set. BCI's official conclusion, the Medina County Sheriff's Office mishandled the initial investigation into Bryon Macron's disappearance. Scene security was compromised. Forensic evidence was likely contaminated or lost. And the failure to treat the incident as a crime scene from the start almost certainly cost investigators the ability to ever solve it. So let's talk about Centner's claims versus reality. Centner claims that nothing was overlooked. However, the township hall wasn't secured. The vehicle wasn't secured. Crime scene basics were ignored, and we thought he left voluntarily. Macron's blood was found at the scene. 6 stab wounds later revealed. We chased down all leads, including NYC, jewelry ties, no record of deep financial background checks or full follow-ups on his business associates. The lake wasn't frozen. That's what he said. We searched thoroughly. He also said that. Weather data shows partial freezing. No FLIR on the plane, and that's the fancy forward-looking infrared that planes have. Drones also have it. The drone unit wasn't deployed due to cold batteries. That's what he says. And again, complete silence even to this day about BCI findings. BCI says the investigation was mishandled. Forensic opportunities lost. So let's roll into Centner's interview.
Okay, I'm on the tape. Today's date is July 22nd, 2019. The time now is 9:43 a.m. approximately. I'm Special Agent Charlie Snyder. I am presently at the Hinckley Township Police Department. Present with me now is Chief David Centner. Chief, for the purpose of the tape, would you state your full name to identify your voice on the tape and spell your last name?
David Centner, Centner.
Okay. And Chief, how long have you been here with Hinckley PD?
Since May of 2018,
okay.
About 14 months.
Okay. And prior to coming here, where did you work at?
The Medina County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. And what was your position there?
I was captain of operations.
Okay. And what's captain of operations in charge of?
My responsibilities, I oversaw the dispatch center, the detective bureau, patrol division, and all of courthouse operations.
So you kind of had day-to-day operations of the whole...
The law enforcement side of the building, yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you to go back to December 16th of 2016. Did you receive a call to Lafayette Township reference of missing persons?
We did, yes.
Okay. Were you on that call as well?
I was initially, yes.
Okay. And in your own words, why don't you tell me what transpired, after you got the call and so forth? What your actions and activities and observations were?
A number of our officers, our day shift supervisor and officers responded to the Lafayette Town Hall. Myself and my patrol lieutenant also were there. I did not go into the building, obviously, because it's a crime scene and only people needed to be in there. But I was told that there was the appearances of, some kind of a disturbance, and there was blood and so forth.
Your patrol lieutenant is
Travis Colonius.
Okay.
At the time. We began our investigation because it was believed that Bryon Macron, one of the township trustees, had been at the building. His vehicle was missing. He was, could not be accounted for. So we ended up getting OnStar to GPS his vehicle. We found his vehicle down in a parking lot at Chippewa Lake. We began to, we located his vehicle, began to search through it, took it. Got a search warrant, and there was a number of items of evidence taken from that vehicle. We searched the area with officers from the sheriff's office, the Medina County Metro Parks. There was quite a number of officers there searching the immediate area.
All right, I did my best not to interrupt. It's just so hard to listen to this. Just the total disdain. I want you guys to listen to this total disdain that he's giving as he's giving the interview. We did this, we did this, we did this. It's almost a total inconvenience. If you listen to the tonality of his voice as he's responding to these questions, it's just a complete inconvenience for him. Just food for thought.
Area for Mr. Macron. It was extremely cold that day. It was down around zero. The State Highway Patrol put a plane up and started doing grid searches of the entire area, specifically over the lake. The lake was not frozen that morning because up until that point in time it had been fairly mild temperatures. The center of the lake was open. No indications on any of the banks or the inlet or the outlet that, there was not a person or a body to be seen from the air. Again, we searched the area and we didn't locate him.
Okay.
We had some information shortly thereafter that he had on video camera from one of the residences that we believe he walked away from his car, and that's basically we continued to search until dark, and with no luck.
Again, it's amazing to me. I want to go back to the actual words here. Where is it? We had some information shortly thereafter from video camera from residents. What is he talking about? Is there still secret video cameras or video that I haven't seen? Is he talking about the Stevenson Beachside residents? We've already covered that. If you haven't seen it, please feel free to go back and watch that. Is that what he's talking about? That you can see Bryon walk away? Is the guy delusional, or is it just me? Please, feel free to leave comments. Let me know. Am I the one that's delusional here? I don't know. Maybe I am.
And did the weather continue to? Was it bad for the rest of the day?
It was cold the rest of that weekend.
Okay.
Saturday morning we went back out. Officers went back out and searched the area again, and we continued to do so. The best that we could.
Did officers have specific areas that they were responsible for?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And once you go on from there, what happened after that?
Back to your point on that, I did create a map of Chippewa Lake and the inlet, the outlet, and that was all listed out with what officers search what specific areas.
Okay.
So that should be, I'm assuming, be available to you.
Yeah, in fact, I have seen that map at the sheriff's office. And what happened next then?
We began our investigation. He was put into the computer system as missing. We had the vehicle, and we just started to investigate. BCI came out and processed the scene at the town hall for us, and we began to investigate his disappearance at that point.
Okay. And was there any one person at the sheriff's office that was directly in charge of the scene, the individual scenes, or the investigation?
Jim Cartwright was the lead detective on the case. The other detectives assisted him. Obviously everybody was involved on the 16th and moving through the weekend and the following week. Then we were up against the holiday, obviously, which complicated things a little bit. But Jim Cartwright was the lead detective.
Okay. And as time goes on, what's the next thing that you recall of importance relative to Macron's disappearance?
I know that Detective Cartwright began to look into his background. We were able to get into his phone. We had his phone. We were able to look into his phone a little bit. Started looking into his financial background. There was a number of things that were of interest. His employment history. And just basically, looking into his life and trying to figure out where he went, because we didn't have a body, so our initial assumption at that time was he left under his own under his own power and his own will. So we didn't have a body. We didn't have anybody calling up saying they kidnapped him. So it began to, as things were popping up out of his phone, we began to believe that he left on his own accord.
Be a voluntary
yes.
disappearance then. At some point, he is subsequently discovered, and the body's discovered. Were you involved in any part of that?
I was, yes. When a kayaker was out kayaking, found a body floating in the water, we were all called and notified. The Detective Bureau, myself, the sheriff, we all responded down to Chippewa Lake with the fire department, and they recovered the body. And there was no question when they brought him out of the water that it was him. Okay. We kind of there's been all kinds of theories about how he ended up in the lake. The best one that we could come up with, which is the most plausible, is on the day of his disappearance, for whatever reason, he made his way into the inlet, and because of how he was dressed and the weather and the terrain and the marshy area he was in, the plane didn't see him. And then when we had all the heavy rains we had at that point in time, and the inlet washes everything into the lake, he got pushed out into the lake and subsequently floated up to the top.
Okay. Did you see the body at all?
I did not.
Okay.
No. Doesn't make sense. The doesn't make sense. His ideas or his theory does not make sense. Again, I did another video. More than welcome to go back. Gone for 67 days. The condition of Bryon's body does not concur with his assessment. Feel free to challenge me. Leave it in the comments. Tell me I'm full of crap. That's fine. Does not concur.
I don't know if you know it or not. The lake, the levels dropped like in November of every year, and it's raised, I think, in February, March of every year.
Correct. And we had
It's raised and lowered, I think, almost 2 feet.
And at that period of time, we had torrential rains for days on end. So that helped with moving his body out into the lake as well.
Did you ever have, from your recollection, any leads that were called into the sheriff's office that were deemed plausible or valuable?
No.
Okay. And did anybody ever call anybody that you're aware of and say that Macron was being extorted or had been kidnapped or had been...
He didn't receive... We know of one very significant tip that was never followed up with. Come on, David Centner, what is going on with you, man? I mean, you get the call from from someone who states that they were in a violent encounter, and you guys never followed up with it. But you're saying that you didn't receive any tips, and that was just the one that I was able to find. And I mean, I can't even take credit for it myself. I mean, that was already victorious investigator at the time, Paul Hartman, was able to find that. So again, what else don't we know about? Who else called in that was never even called or called back, followed up with? This interview just irritates me.
Any kind of victim of a serious crime?
There were a number of calls and leads that came in as to his involvement with other jewelry sales folks from New York City, and their connections supposedly to organized crime, and all those things were run down and checked out, and nothing ever became of any of those leads.
Okay.
I'm sorry, folks. Where are those leads? You talking about like there's maybe 1 or 2 leads in the investigation? Where are they? They're not in the file. Oh, man,
The body is pulled from the lake and eventually goes to Cuyahoga County, where there's an autopsy done. Do you know what the results of the autopsy, what the findings were?
The coroner would not determine the exact cause of death because there was really no way to tell because of the time the body had been in the water. I do believe that the wounds that were on his body appeared to be superficial, would not have caused his death in and of.
He believes the ones were superficial, and Chief Centner, we know that one of them was not superficial. One was extremely deep. I mean, I guess superficial may be a relative term to you, but into the skeletal muscle, that's pretty deep to me.
Themselves, it would have taken other being out in the weather, out in the elements to help those wounds along. But the wounds in and of themselves were not life-threatening, at least with some treatment initially. So that's what I know about that.
Okay. Is there anything that you're aware of that wasn't investigated or should have been investigated in the course of this that was overlooked or anything?
No.
Okay. As I understand it, Sergeant Sanford had drones, or was responsible for drones for the sheriff's office?
That is correct.
Would the weather have been conducive for him to put his drones up?
No, because of the temperature of that day and the next day, when you get down into those types of temperatures.
What? Oh, Charlie Snyder. What a leading question. Well, would it have been conducive? Come on. People, I'll have more on that in a second. I'm sorry. I know I said I wouldn't interrupt, but I just get so irritated with this interview. This is the guy that's supposed to be in charge. This is the guy that's supposed to know everything about this investigation. I mean, he might know, I won't say he has to know all the minutia per se, but overall, he should know everything. But here we go.
There's the battery life on anybody's drones becomes very, very minimal. It would not have been plausible to put it up. We had our K9 unit down there. The K9 unit didn't pick up anything. So
how the K9 unit, which it's a sheriff's K9
yes.
unit? Is it a tracker? Or
yes, it is.
Okay. And the OSP plane that was up, do you know if it had FLIR on it?
It did not.
Okay. So they're doing a visual flyover looking
Correct.
for... Okay.
And he did that flyover back and forth, and basically north to south, east to west over the lake for quite some time.
Is that right? Okay. You don't happen to know who did you ever get any reports from OSP?
Yes, we did. That's included in the Sheriff's Department's report.
Okay. Good enough. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think I should be aware of?
There is not.
Okay. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and stop the tape for right now.
So there you have it, folks. What is it? 12 minutes and 26 seconds for the person that was in charge of the investigation overall. Obviously, he's stating that Cartwright was the lead detective, but overall, he was in charge of this investigation. So 12 minutes and 26 seconds of disdain. His tonality sort of changed towards the end, but at the beginning, you could see, I can't say you can see, you could hear the total disdain in his voice. Now that you've heard Centner out, here's the question. Was this case of bad luck or a case of early preventable failures that guaranteed we would never get the full truth? Centner's version of events is polished. BCI's version is documented. This wasn't a media hit job, it was reality, backed up by the state's own investigators. If you're frustrated listening to this, you should be. I was, as you can see. So let's talk about Swinehart's theory and what BCI found. Swinehart suggests Macron's body was washed into Chippewa Lake weeks or months after his disappearance, possibly by floodwaters or spring thaw. But here's what BCI's investigations found. BCI did not agree with the theory that Macron's body was washed into the lake. Their review of the environmental records, lake hydrology, and weather data cast serious doubt on any delayed wash-in scenario. No significant flood events occurred between Macron's disappearance and the recovery of his body. Chippewa Lake, shallow and relatively stagnant, does not support the kind of water movement needed for that theory. And please let me know if you live in Chippewa Lake and I'm wrong. If everything that I've researched and recall as a child growing up there is wrong, feel free to comment. In short, BCI did not support the idea that Bryon Macron's body entered the lake long after his disappearance. So let's roll Swinehart's interview.
Okay, today's date is June 20th, 2018. The time now is 1:20 p.m. I am presently at the Medina County Park District located at 6364 Deerview Lane, Medina, Ohio 44256. And presently I am with David Swinehart. He is the Chief Ranger for the Medina County Parks District. Dave, for the purpose of the tape and identify your name on the tape, would you state your full name and spell your last name?
David A. Swinehart, Swinehart.
Okay. And you currently are the chief here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how long have you been the chief?
3 years.
Okay. And what's the staffing on your department?
I have a staff of 4 full-time rangers, 2 part-time rangers, and an auxiliary ranger.
Okay. And I want to thank you for taking me on the tour of Chippewa Lake and showing me the information, providing me with information relative to the Macron question death scene. You've also provided me with reports. I just want to make sure I have all that documented on the tape, both from the original search for after Mr. Macron was reported missing on 12/16/2016 in the discovery of his car, and also the February 21, 2017, reports associated with the recovery of his body when it was found floating in Chippewa Lake.
Yes, sir.
Can you kind of go through on the what happened on December the 16th, 2016? How that unfolded, weather conditions, and so forth?
On December 16th, I was on shift that morning. The Sheriff's Department received a call of a missing person with suspicious circumstances from the Lafayette Township Hall, which is about 2 miles from our office building. They described the scene as a bloody mess, and were looking for Bryon Macron, who had went missing. So being in the area, I offered my assistance to help look for him outside of or within the park boundaries and so forth, because we have a big area of property that runs from Route 42 all the way down through Chippewa Lake is Park District with a 3-mile inlet paved trail that is a biking and hiking trail. With water on one side and wetland preservation on the other side. So we began checking that area. And so first started up at Buckeye Woods Park, which is next door to our headquarters. We do have a pond there. It's maybe a 5-acre pond with a asphalt trail around that pond as well. So we want to make sure that nobody drove any vehicles up there or drove into the pond. So I checked that, and there was nothing. I continued to drive the trail up to the North Inlet Trail parking area. Mm-hmm. We also have an inlet loop up there as well for a wetland preservation with a small body of water, more so just a wetland that's not very deep, maybe 2-3 feet deep tops. Didn't notice anything up there. Continued down, drove the entire inlet trail all the way down to Chippewa Road. Just looking for anything unusual. Now, the one thing I did notice is that the inlet trail was froze over the whole time. There were no breakage in the ice anywhere along that trail.
Why don't you tell me about the weather conditions, too? What was the weather conditions on December 16th? What was it like, if you recall?
I recall it being very, very cold and windy. It was about 5 degrees out and bitter cold winds. To the point where I actually put my ski gloves and toboggan hat on when I was outside of the car. So it was cold.
Okay.
It was not snowing at the time. We may have gotten a little bit overnight in terms of a dusting, but nothing of an accumulated amount.
When you said you were looking for unusual things, you were looking for footprints in that snow, or
right? I was looking for footprints in the snow. I was looking for tire tracks into the inlet. I was looking for disruptions to the ice where maybe it had broken, refroze overnight. I didn't see any of that. So at that point, I started looking at ditch lines around the park area. And I had originally been, when the call came in, I was originally at the Chippewa Lake public launch ramp on the west side of the lake. So I left there, and as I came up to Buckeye Woods, I was looking in ditch lines along the way up Ballish Road. When I drove the inlet trail back down, I then checked ditch lines along Chippewa Road, back up Ballish Road, getting out of the car, checking culvert pipes.
When you say checking culvert, you're actually looking inside
inside the culvert pipes, because at this point, with what I had information-wise from the Sheriff's Department, and with the amount of blood that I was told was at the scene, we were kind of in the mindset that maybe we were looking for a body versus a missing person. So I was in more of a recovery mode than a search and rescue kind of mode. So I was looking in the culvert pipes. We drove back a couple farm fields along the way, and over at the corner of Ballish and State Route 162, there's a series of old barns that sit there, and I pulled in there, got out and checked those as well. Didn't see anything, didn't have any tire tracks going into them, didn't have any footprints around them, went into the barns, didn't see anything out of sight there, out of the ordinary there as well. Dispatch ultimately come back and said they had located the car at Chippewa Lake Beach, which is at the corner of Beachside Boulevard and Longacre Lane.
And we visited that just a little bit ago.
Yes, sir. So I responded down there, see what I could do to assist them as well. When I arrived, Deputy Donato was already there. I believe Detective Shizmenos was there also. He's no longer with the sheriff's office. He retired. And eventually, Deputy King arrived, who is the Sheriff's Department Canine Unit. So he worked his dog around the area. As a couple more deputies arrived, I took my ranger that was working, Ranger Whiteegg, and we continued to search the area. The one thing we did notice while we were down at the lake is there were no footprints in the snow going over to the body of water. The lake was iced over, and the only part that was thawed was a middle section of the lake itself. The only footprints we saw in the snow around the lake were an older couple who were walking their dog when we had came down to the vehicle. Other than that, there were no footprints, and nothing that indicated that he went into the lake or onto the ice at that point.
Was there anything around his vehicle that you noticed as far as footprints?
There were no footprints around the car because there was no snow or anything on the pavement. Didn't notice any blood. I figured if there was that much blood at the township hall, that maybe there was some blood around his car, something that we could track, and there was nothing. Deputy Donato went south along the beach through the private access ramp for boat launch to look that direction, while Ranger Whiteegg and I went back north, and ultimately we got in our cars and we went back up towards the inlet, as well as the Chippewa Nature Preserve on Chippewa Road. Once again, checked that area pretty well, looking for any disruptions or anything unusual, just doing double checks. Went back over to the public launch ramp and checked the west side boundary shores. Didn't see any disruptions or anything unusual over there. At one point, I met with Lieutenant Linscott from the Sheriff's Department down at the Chippewa launch ramp, and he had been in the area conducting some recon as well. And at that point, I do remember he was talking with OSP, the Ohio State Patrol, because they had launched a plane into the area and they were doing a grid search of Chippewa Lake and the surrounding wetlands, and they never
saw
indicated anything
had any kind of alert that way.
Right. I know at one point I did get out of the car. I believe Lynn Scott did as well, because we wanted to double check, just because of the nature of the situation. We wanted to double check some areas we had already checked, and checked underneath the bridge of the inlet on Chippewa Road, adjacent to the park. And there were no disruptions around the bridge abutment or to the ice below.
And it was froze over there.
And it was froze over as well.
Just to familiarize anybody that's listening to this tape, the public boat ramp or launch ramp, that's on the west side of the lake?
That's correct.
And the inlet bridge that you've talked about, and that's on the north
side of the lake.
And in the private parking area, or the public parking area, that's on where the beach is and so forth, that's on the east side of the lake, and that actually is north of the old Chippewa Lake Park.
Correct.
That's no longer in operation.
That's correct.
Okay. Did as your day went on, was there anything else turn up from the searches in the area? Did you find anything at all, or do you know if anybody found anything suspicious?
No, not that I'm aware of. And in fact, we made it a point to patrol down there extra that day as well as the next couple of days, because the one thing that I told my rangers was I don't want to find a body floating on our lake come springtime. So we made it a point for about 2 or 3 days afterwards to just double check our work, checking culvert pipes again, just backtracking our steps because we didn't want to have a negative connotation come on the park district because it is our lake, and you don't want that kind of stigma tied to your public beach area. So,
his car, when his car was found, it wasn't pulled with the front end of the car in towards the lake, was it?
No, it was not. It was sitting parallel to the lake across parking spaces.
And that would have been probably to the south.
It would have been facing south.
And that intersection again is
Beachside and Longacre Lane.
And it's kind of like on the north end of the parking lot itself, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you get a chance to look at the car very well?
I did look at the car.
Did you have any observations or recollections from your observations looking at the car?
Well, I recall it being clean. It seemed like it was pretty clean. The seat did seem like it was pulled forward a little bit, which I kind of thought was a little odd because
the front seat,
the driver's seat was pulled forward a little bit. I thought it was kind of odd because I do know Bryon as he was a township trustee, and I've had dealings with him before, not on a personal level, but on a professional level, and through acquaintance with Sergeant Sanford at the sheriff's office. And I knew Bryon was a bigger guy, so I kind of thought it was odd that the seat was pulled up a little bit. Because he goes probably about 260 to 280 pounds, probably about 6 foot tall. And I thought, it's odd, but I didn't really think anything of it. And I did notice a little bit of blood around the steering wheel area.
Okay. Was the car locked or unlocked or doors open, closed? Did you make any observations that way?
I do not recall if the car was locked or not because, as I said, there was a couple deputies on scene when I got down to the car.
So they were pretty much taking control of that. Okay. So you've been a chief deputy for 3 years. In your history here as chief deputy, and if you know anything before that, has there ever been any kind of an incident where a victim has either been robbed and dumped, or a robbery has occurred in the area of Chippewa Lake? In your experience?
We have not had any incidents down there regarding any type of suicide, any type of assaults. That I can think of at this point. We do have the village there. I know the sheriff's department are over there for the residential disturbances and so forth, but we've not had anything on the lake or water other than maybe an occasional husband-wife arguing or
a domestic fight type situation or something.
Yeah. Okay. Or an angry boater with another one, but never an assault or robbery and in fact, I don't even believe that we've had any suicides at Chippewa Lake that I can recall.
Okay. The flow of the water through the lake runs from the north, where the inlet is, and it runs to the south. Do you know what the next body of water to the south is?
I believe that would be the Chippewa Creek is what it flows into.
And that flows on down to...
That flows down through Wayne County.
Okay. I think eventually somewhere did they get down into either Tuscarawas River or something down there?
Yes.
So, yeah. You were also involved when the body was found.
Yes, sir.
And that, according to the reports you've given me, that's dated February 21, 2017.
Yes, sir.
Can you go through what happened on that day?
On that day, I was actually had already left work and received a call from dispatch that a kayaker out on the lake found located a body on the north end of the lake.
Do you know who the kayaker was by any chance?
I do not. That information was taken by the sheriff's office when their investigators came down to handle that. So I got the call. I responded back in. Ranger Whiteegg was again working that day as well, and he had met with Sergeant Heckle, and we had made it a point to allocate our pontoon boat for the recovery effort because I know the fire department was having some issues with their boat that day. So we made contact with our maintenance foreman. He went and brought the boat out to us.
Who is that again? That's Heckle?
Who's the maintenance supervisor?
Our maintenance supervisor is Joe Hoax.
Okay.
He came out. We just want to make sure the boat was going to run because we do keep it dry docked in the building in the wintertime. And they'd make sure it had fresh fuel. The battery, we keep it on a battery tender. So it's pretty much ready to go at any time. It's just a matter of getting the mixed fuel into the tank and dragging it out.
Yeah.
So when I rolled in, I met with Sergeant Heckle from the Sheriff's Department on the north end of the lake, and they were trying to decide where they were going to bring the body out of the water at. So my suggestion to him was that we use our public launch ramp because I can control access to that. Now, the north end of the lake at this time, with all the Sheriff's Department and Fire Department personnel down there, all the residents had come out because they want to see what's going on. So I told him, I said, let's just use our public ramp. I said, we'll run over there. We'll close it off. We're going to be down there anyway because we have to put our boat in the water. So that's what we did. We went over. There were a couple people over there. In fact, one was a news reporter, and he wanted to ask questions. So I informed him that Incident Command was on the north side of the lake, and Captain Centner was there. Pointed him the direction, so that's where he went. I closed the gate behind him and shut it off to all traffic other than emergency personnel. We put our boat in the water. Maintenance Supervisor Hoax was driving the boat, and I was sitting on the back. It's a small pontoon boat. If you get too many people on the front end of it, it tends to want to nosedive into the water. So on board with us was the county coroner, Lisa Duranick, her investigator, Amy Kerr, I believe Deputy Siebert, and Detective Cartwright of the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
So we responded out to the body, which was on the north side of the lake, probably about 100 yards offshore at that point. And the fire department by this time had managed to get their boat running, got it out to the body. They had not divers, but they had personnel in
water rescue
in the water. Once we got to that point, Dr. Duranick and her investigator with the deputies managed to pull his body into the boat, into a body bag. She did a very brief observation. We took the boat back to our ramp. He was immediately lifted off of our boat and placed onto the cot of an awaiting squad and placed in the squad.
Okay. When you saw the body, when you got pushed, the body was do you recall anything about the condition? Was it dressed or undressed?
It was dressed. It looked like a pair of jeans, a pair of black boots, if I recall. Had on I believe it might have been a sweatshirt or a jacket of some sort. But the one thing I noticed that his hands were pulled up inside the sleeves, almost
as if he was cold. You mean?
Right, almost as if he were
like
cold,
and
kind of grasped the ends of the sleeves, and his hands were kind of. Well, I didn't see his hands. All I could see was that his hands were up inside the sleeves at that point.
Let me ask you to speculate on it. If you did a straight line distance from where his car was at to where the body was at, what would you estimate that the distance was? And
I would have to say at least 400, 450 yards.
Okay.
The lake itself is 335 acres, 340 acres.
Okay. The condition of the lake on that date in February, was there still ice on the lake?
In February, no, the ice had melted.
So it warmed up, and
it had warmed up. The ice had melted. It was actually a fairly calm day on the lake that day.
From your, and you have prior law enforcement experience and stuff like that, and you were with the Medina SO?
I was with Medina County Sheriff's Office and retired as a patrol sergeant.
Okay. What do you feel? How do you feel? What's your thoughts on how he ended up there? What do you think as far as where he may have entered the water, how he ended up where he was at, with your personal observations that you made from December to then? I mean, do you have any speculation or guesses?
My speculation is that he probably died outside of the water and got washed in during the thaw and the spring flooding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of hesitant to really pick a location where I think he may have went in, because what I have found with that water is the currents run different ways at different times, mm-hmm. depending on the wind. Mm-hmm. Now, if he's under the water, I suppose it does flow from north to south. There is a channel that pretty much runs right down the middle of the lake, mm-hmm. and if you get in that channel, you're going to float from the north to the south. Mm-hmm. But if you get a strong west wind or a strong south wind, I have seen objects float north. Mm-hmm. An example would be, I had a buoy down at Gloria Glens, which is the next village below Chippewa Lake. The buoy broke loose from its anchor, and we recovered it in the lily pads on the north end of the lake. Hmm. So depending on what kind of boat traffic's out there, what kind of wind direction,
sometimes I would have to. I'm guessing this may have happened as well. It happens in the lake. If you have a steady flow, let's say, for sake of argument or discussion, and it runs north or south, but the body of water is wide, you can have eddies on the side. As that flows through, it causes a reverse action along the shallower ends, I would think.
Correct, and we have seen that.
Yeah. So that would explain even in part, in lack of the wind, it could explain mm-hmm. maybe how the buoy got there.
Right. But I would say, if nothing else, my best guess would be he either went in on the north of the lake. There's another creek up on the north end of the lake. It's McCabe Creek, and it kind of gets overgrown too. But when it floods, it fills pretty good and it flows pretty good. Mm-hmm. So possibility went down into McCabe's Creek. He could have went into the high area. We had some high reedish kind of mm-hmm. Wetland grass where the inlet actually channels into the lake. And if you got into that and you got hunkered down, you're not going to see it without walking directly into it or directly on top of it.
And the level of the lake has changed mechanically.
Yes, it is.
And how much, as far as water level, does it change, and how is that? Do you have an idea of when that takes effect? And
yes, we routinely in November we pull a plate out of the Chippewa outlet at Lake Road. Mm-hmm. We have a little dam down there, and we mm-hmm. raise this plate to drop the water level in the lake to control flooding in the winter time. Usually when we pull that plate, it drops the water level by about 2 feet.
Okay. And it actually drops the water level in the lake itself?
Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. To the point where if you're up on the north end at Point Park, where I showed you the big dead tree, mm-hmm. That tree is no longer next to the shore. That tree is now about 30 yards from the shore itself when that water level drops. Okay. Because it is shallow up on that north
mm-hmm.
end.
Okay.
I say even right now with the water level and the plate going back in, I would have to say that the water depth on that north end is only 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep.
When does the plate normally go back in?
We usually put the plate back in the 3rd week of May because we want it 2nd to 3rd week of May. Sometimes, depending on the weather conditions, mm-hmm. we might even go as early as the last week of April because we want the water level back up for Memorial Day.
Okay. So if we go back to the dates in between these two dates, that plate was out during that whole period of time, and the water level would have been 2 foot, likely 2 foot
yes.
shallower
yes.
than the lake's normal water level.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time. Do you have any other observations or any information I haven't asked you about that you think?
I wanted to pause that because I'm a legit question, just so I'm understanding the detail of the interview here. All right, they don't pull that plate out until May, but it was February. All right, so Bryon's body was found in February. He's stating that they don't typically pull that plate out until May. So what would have caused any type of water distribution, flooding, and or water movement, I guess is what I'm looking for, in February? And again, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe the flooding and the weather. Feel free, comment below if you know. I just found that very interesting. I didn't catch that, honestly, the first time. But he's stating that the plate doesn't get removed until May. I thought initially with Centner's interview, he was trying to allude that, as the water rose, essentially, that's what his theory was. Even though, again, it still doesn't make any sense forensically. But I'm just trying to alleviate anything that I can possibly think of. And I think it's very interesting that the plate does not get removed until May. Bryon's body is found in February. So it's not corresponding. But feel free, comment below.
Maybe pertinent to this investigation?
I don't really have a whole lot of information other than our efforts that we helped with the Sheriff's Department with, because it was their initial call in Lafayette Township. We loaned our manpower for assistance whenever we could. They've kind of kept the investigation on their end. I did meet with Captain Centner at one point to show him on a map that he had drafted up of the lake itself, to show him the areas that we had covered in our initial search, and then subsequently.
Was that after the body was recovered that you did that, or was that during the period of time you were doing the searches? During
the period of time that we were actually looking for evidence. Now, after the recovery, I did meet with Sergeant Ross at the Sheriff's Department, Detective Sergeant, as well as some BCI agents who had came down, and we were going out to do an evidence search of the lake. And on that particular day, I think it was maybe 3 days after the recovery, I loaned them a John boat of ours so that we could actually go out into the water and patrol around the shores to see if there was anything that we could find, and we didn't find anything that day either.
Okay. You indicated that you knew Bryon Macron from professional prior contact. Have you ever seen Bryon at the lake? Did you know if he had any friends or associates that lived in the area down there?
Bryon lived just a stone's throw away from the lake.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yes, he lived over off of Chippewa Road. There's a new development over there, and I think it's Fayette Drive. So he's pretty close to the lake, so it wouldn't surprise me if he made it to the lake often. I had never seen him down there, but my understanding is his daughter had done polar bear plungers in the past. I know every year they do the polar bear plunge, and it's kind of sponsored by the trustees and village council, and
When did they do that? Do you know?
Usually in January.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, well, I don't think I have any other questions at the time. If I do, if it's okay with you, I'll give you a call. Try not to drag you off the roads again. I may talk to your personnel, and I'll probably do, if I don't meet with them, I'll probably do telephone interviews with them. So if you'd advise them.
And I did. I spoke to them, let them know that you would be in contact and to cooperate with you in whatever way they could. And
well, I really appreciate it. I thank you very much for your cooperation and providing me with documents and so forth, and the tour of Chippewa Lake.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and stop the tape at this point.
All right. Again, I don't need to disparage very much on Swinehart. We just heard his account's less defensive. It's more detailed. They definitely did probably the most search that was conducted out of anyone, which is somewhat sad, but still built around assumptions that don't match the physical evidence. Frozen lakes, except for the center, washed in bodies, and crucial signs like blood on the steering wheel, and a seat pushed too far forward for a man Macron's size that were quietly underplayed. All right, folks, so if you have any comments, please feel free to comment below. If you have any tips, seen something they didn't, send us your case submissions or confidential tips to the infamousxchief.com or the link right here, the QR code that I'll put up here. Scan it. Or feel free to email me at the infamousxchief@gmail.com. We keep our sources tight and our leaks non-existent. So just a quick plug again. Want to join our real investigation, get behind the scenes access, and connect with the rest of the Tentacle Nation on Discord. The link, again, is in that same description here, or go to the infamousxchief.com. Come for the discussion, stay for the unfiltered truth. So, as a reminder, I'm going to put up in post-production this comment that came in, and I felt it very important to address it because afterwards I didn't want to appear that I was, again, if you don't agree with what I'm saying, please feel free, call me out on it, right? But don't make some sort of comment and then provide no factual basis behind your comment. Don't tell me that you know who killed JFK and provide me no evidence, all right? So the infamous ex-chief deals in facts, speculation, rumors, conspiracy theories that aren't backed by real evidence. Isn't going to happen. Save it for the Facebook comment sections. Here we deal with what we can prove. And again, I offered this party the ability to comment afterwards. Hey, again, I'm not seeing anything in the financial records. And we're going to do a segment on the phone data. A more in-depth, I know that we've probably touched a little bit about it, but we're going to do a pretty deep dive into the phone data that was recovered. All sorts of things were deleted. And it could be theoretically possible from the way they extracted some of the data, but I mean, a lot of things were deleted. Things were accessed at times when Bryon was supposed to be missing between the township and before his vehicle was discovered. So all sorts of weird things, but we haven't gotten into that yet. But so again, my point is, if you want to disagree with me, please feel free to do so, but come at me with some sort of evidence. Don't just say, oh, he had financial difficulties. Okay, well, show me where it is, because I'm not seeing it. So, as usual, be loud, be heard, shake the system until the truth falls out.